At this point, I've offered some different ways for thinking about feminism. This includes a way of examining the variation within it, recognizing its different components, and assessing how some feminists view society at large. In this video, I'd like to discuss the concept of intersectionality. This is an idea which has become very prevalent within a lot of feminist thinking, and has also been the source of much criticism from outsiders. Because of this, I'll offer a very brief overview of some key aspects, as well as some of the criticisms which have been made against it. As a disclaimer, it is worth noting that this may not be the only way in which people understand the term, and its definition and application may continue to evolve in the future. One way of understanding intersectionality can come from examining a potential shortcoming of feminism. Consider a feminist who believes that we live in a patriarchal society. This worldview implies that women as a group are disadvantaged, oppressed, and face discrimination that men do not experience. In order to address the inequality in society, this feminist may inquire about what specific problems women face. By answering this question, she can determine what solutions to implement. In light of this, it's worthwhile to pause and consider some of the presuppositions which give rise to this situation. For example, the feminist has, presumably, categorized people into groups based on a common identity. In this case, the categories include, although may not be limited to, men and women. She also seems to believe that the experiences of these groups in society differ. In general, women are an oppressed group and men are privileged. What this implies is that there are certain challenges that women will face, which men will not. From this, it's possible for one to conclude that there is some commonality between women, some shared experience that they have with one another. Yet one may find that determining the problems that women universally have in society isn't a straightforward process. Such stems from the observation that not all women face the same problems. Rather, they encounter unique challenges that make it hard to lump them all into one homogeneous category. Intersectionality provides a way of understanding society that tries to shed light on this situation. It seeks to explain why women experience oppression and discrimination in so many different ways. It does this by appealing to different groups within society that face oppression. The problems that women face due to sexism are just one component. Discrimination can also occur based on one's race, class, sexual orientation, gender identity, and so on. Moreover, a given person can face discrimination based upon belonging to more than one oppressed group. For example, a woman who is a lesbian may experience discrimination because of her sexual orientation, in addition to sexism. Likewise, a poor black woman may experience classism, racism, and sexism. What this implies is that one cannot understand the challenges that women face solely by assessing sexism. Rather, one must also assess racism, classism, and a host of other factors. While one hallmark of intersectionality is to advocate a multidimensional approach in order to understand the problems that people face, it also claims that the unique combinations of discrimination can give rise to unique experiences. To illustrate this idea, consider what life will be like for a black woman. Some may propose that one can simply look at the racism a black man experiences and combine it with the sexism that a white woman experiences. This is where intersectionality may disagree. To understand the oppression and discrimination that black women face requires understanding the unique challenges that result from the intersection of two oppressed identities, that is, being a minority and being a woman. Allowing the sexism that white women experience and the racism that black men experience to be representative of the racism and sexism that black women experience will cause us to overlook the distinct problems that affect this group. This way of thinking can influence how we view society as a whole. It moves beyond simply using a patriarchal perspective based on the idea that such fails to address the complexity of the world. In order to avoid entertaining an oversimplified conception of society, some may string together a long list of terms to describe its oppressive features. For example, one may refer to America as a white supremacist, capitalist, cis-heteronormative patriarchy. Without getting into the details of unpacking this phrase, notice how this approach doesn't focus solely on race, class, gender, or any other identity. Rather, it thinks that a far more accurate picture of society emerges when we consider a number of them together. In a sense, this takes the broad way in which the patriarchy makes us think about society as a whole and injects a number of other dimensions into the equation. It resists the idea that these different forms of discrimination occur in a vacuum, and argues for a far more integrated approach. Such, some claim, will offer more accurate insights into the state of society and helps us develop more effective solutions than any single-dimension approach could ever produce. Of course, just as the patriarchy is a controversial topic, the ideas advanced by intersectional theorists give rise to a lot of debate as well. One critique claims that it places too much of an emphasis on group identity and doesn't assess people as individuals. Sometimes this can breed the mentality that, if you belong to certain groups, then you ought to think a certain way. As a result, some members of oppressed groups who hold views that differ from the mainstream may claim that the intersectional movement has been, at times, hostile towards them. Others critique the impact that intersectionality can have on people. Because it focuses on which groups face oppression within society, some see it as breeding a victim mentality. This can have a number of negative consequences. For example, it can create a situation where people are less likely to take responsibility for their actions. Rather than view their shortcomings as the result of poor decisions, they may blame them on how society has oppressed them. It can also disempower people by telling them that they are victims, that the cards are stacked against them, and that they will constantly face discrimination. Those on the receiving end of this message may not believe in their ability to succeed in life and may unnecessarily throw in the towel. In some instances, this line of thinking can imply that oppressed groups need help, in many cases from the government, in order to succeed. At other times, it can breed a somewhat negative attitude towards more privileged groups. For example, some claim that the phrase rich, white, straight male is used almost as an insult to describe people who are ignorant of their privilege, out of touch with the struggles that others face, and perhaps even culpable for the inequality in society. Others object to intersectionality based on how it evaluates the content of what people say. Some claim that intersectionality creates an atmosphere in which people who have faced numerous forms of oppression are seen as more authoritative when they speak on social issues. This leads to a situation where a white male's views on race and gender issues may be viewed as less trustworthy, irrespective of how well they are substantiated, just because of his race and sex. On the other hand, a black woman may be seen, by virtue of her race and sex, to be more authoritative on the problems and solutions related to these issues, even if her perspective isn't as well validated. Although much more could be said about the content of intersectionality, as well as the arguments for and against it, hopefully this video has at least offered some basic exposure to a very influential way of thinking that has transformed contemporary feminism and ushered in a tremendous amount of criticism. At the heart of it seems to be a push for greater nuance and the acceptance of a multidimensional approach to understanding social issues. Of course, how these ideas manifest in society and their factual validity give rise to a great deal of disagreement. Hopefully this video has at least offered some basic tools for thinking about this concept. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.